Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 237. On this episode of the podcast, Jen looks at the issue of shyness, how it can hold you back at work, and what you can do to overcome it. Our thanks to the sponsor of today's podcast, Patron Tequila, making ultra-premium tequila since 1989.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast with me, Jen Swanson, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Hey there, thanks for tuning in. Are you a shy person? Have you ever felt that your shyness held you back from doing something, from accomplishing something, from getting something that you really wanted? We're going to talk about that today. And we're going to talk about that thanks to a listener suggestion sent to me by Gayatri Gayu, who writes from India. Gayatri says that she is learning English and asks how to do that, especially when very shy. So thank you, Gayatri. We'll get to that topic today in just a moment. I am back from attending the second annual Vancouver Podcast Festival, and I have to say it was so much fun. There were all sorts of events and master classes and people podcasting on a variety of topics, from political to social justice to true crime to comedy. There was a lot to learn. And in the next few months, I'm hoping to bring some of the amazing people that I met at the festival onto the show so that you can hear their stories too. It was so great. My brain is so tired. It's bursting full of ideas, and suddenly I have a whole bunch of new podcasts that I need to listen to. So a huge shout out to the Van Podfest organizers, all the volunteers and the presenters. It was even better than last year. Now, if you would like to support this podcast so that we can keep bringing you great content, please come over to careersbyjen.com/support. And for as little as $1 a month, less than a cup of coffee, you can become a patron of the show. careersbyjen.com/support. So let's get to today's topic. Is shyness holding you back? What does it mean to be shy anyway? Well, according to Dr. Lynn Henderson, who is a clinical psychologist and researcher with the Shyness Institute in Berkeley, California, shyness is a universal human emotion that all of us experience and can be defined as a blend of fear and interest. I thought that was interesting. Shyness comes in varying grades. It comes from ordinary shyness that many people experience to an actual diagnosis of social anxiety disorder, or SAD. And as to the results of any kind of shyness, the symptoms and ramifications are real, whether it's missed opportunity because you're afraid to speak up or to join in or to put your opinion forward, to physical responses that can happen to people who are extremely shy, like upset stomach, sweating, shaking, sleep disturbances, etc. Can shyness hold you back? The short answer is yes, and it doesn't have to. Now, a clinical diagnosis of social anxiety can be debilitating and is at the far end of the shyness spectrum, and likely needs some professional attention in order to help it to be properly managed or resolved. The good news is that with the right kind of help, it is absolutely possible for you to learn to lessen your anxiety and your shyness. Shyness, garden variety shyness on the other end of the spectrum, can definitely be improved also with some intentional practices, and we're going to get into some of those in a minute. There's everything in between those two ends of the shyness spectrum. and only you know where you will fit on that, in that gradient. So what are the costs of being shy, especially at work? Well, besides missed opportunities, as I mentioned before, there are some other costs to your productivity, to your advancement. And these might be things that you might be doing, like procrastinating. It's really hard to be motivated to do something if you're afraid to do it. And sometimes people who are shy put off approaching others to raise concerns or to voice their opinions. Sometimes it is easier to just not and to see what happens by doing nothing, which isn't really taking the power that you have to voice your opinion. But it's allowing other people to drive the bus, as it were. And usually this kind of thing, it's not born out of laziness or apathy. It's not because you don't care. If you are shy, it can be a result of fear. And it can be a result of the fear of being judged, or the fear of being criticized, or the fear of failure, or the fear of not being taken seriously. There's fear of all sorts of things that could be wrapped up in why a person who is shy would rather procrastinate. And so procrastination and avoidance become more attractive because they feel at first easier. In the end, they're not, because in the end, you're not getting your opinions out there. You're not contributing as you would like to. You might have all sorts of great ideas locked up in your head, but if you can't get them out in an efficient way, then no one's going to know about them. And so then that can lead to other feelings like anger and frustration. So it seems easier at first to procrastinate, but in the end, it probably costs a lot more than it first seems. And the results to your career, of course, could be problematic. I once had a student, a healthcare student, who was so shy. Her voice was so quiet that she often went unheard. Even when she did have the courage to speak up and say something, her voice was so quiet and so soft that often other people didn't even hear her, or they didn't pay attention to her when there was a conversation happening. And part of the job that she was training for involved strong communication skills. She needed to have those. And while she knew theoretically what she was supposed to do, the execution of it was a challenge that she had to overcome. She had to actually interrupt people in the busy hustle bustle of a hospital. She had to know if there was an urgent test result, or if there was a phone call somebody was waiting for. She had to go up and often interrupt conversations of people who quote unquote important people. And shyness just wasn't an option when you're in a hurry. And so she needed to learn how to speak up loudly enough to be heard, and to be confident enough to walk into a crowd and say, that person you called is on the line now. The phone call's ready, waiting for you. Which could mean the difference in what kind of care was delivered to the patient. So, it was an important thing that she needed to overcome. And so with some practice, with some time, with some intentionality, she absolutely did, and was able to confidently go up to people, interrupt them, use her voice, speak up. She was still pretty quiet, but she was able to make herself heard and get the job done in the end. And it was far, far better by the time she was finished her practicum than when she first started. So being shy can result in, if you don't work on it, in some situations, can result in all sorts of negative things for your career. It can result in inaction, as in you don't do things you might otherwise do if you're too shy. The example that Gayatri sent was learning a new language. Well, it's pretty hard to learn a new language if you don't practice it with somebody. And if you're too shy to practice speaking the language that you're trying to learn, then it's going to take you an awful lot longer to learn it. And I would hazard to say that it's probably going to be really hard, much harder to try and learn a language if you're not practicing it with somebody else. So overcoming shyness on many fronts is a good thing to do. Now, there are some benefits to being shy. It's not all doom and gloom, and being shy is not a horrible thing unless you feel that it is. Sometimes people who are shy are slower to speak, and so they think about things more than someone who just immediately reacts and is maybe more extroverted. And more assertive and more confident. But a person who is shy might really think things over before they venture to offer their opinion. People who are shy sometimes have trouble making friends, and so the friendships that they do make are deeper relationships with other people. So there are some, sometimes people who are shy are able to work in solitary jobs more effectively and not worry about having to interact with people, and can get a lot done when you're not socializing around the water cooler. So there are some good things about being shy too. But I want to give you some steps. And now I did a whole podcast. I was thinking I did something on this a long time ago, and I went back and found episode number 62, and it was called Communication Diva then, but it's in the same feed. So if you go back and look for episode 62 in your podcast feed, you will find an episode when we were called Communication Diva that talks specifically about ways to overcome shyness. So some of this might repeat itself, and I'm sorry if it does. It's still relevant, that episode, but I'm going to try and give you 5 more things that you can do that maybe will be a little bit different than when I talked about before, as in ways to help yourself, concrete ways to help yourself overcome shyness if you want to. So the first thing is to get rid of the label. Ditch that label. I'm a shy person. Just stop saying that to yourself, because when you say that to yourself, you will believe it. Your brain will believe it. So get rid of the label. And when you get rid of the label, then you will be free to begin to start venturing out of that box you've put yourself in, the box of being a shy person. So get rid of the label. Stop telling yourself that you're shy, because if you keep telling yourself that, you will be, and let that go so that you can expand and move into not being a shy person. That's my first tip. My second tip is to don't advertise it. Don't tell anybody else. Don't tell yourself that you're shy, and don't advertise it. Don't say, "Oh, I'm shy," to other people. It's not a good excuse anymore. Leave that piece of information about yourself out of the conversation, and maybe people will just think you're introspective, or you take time before you respond in a social situation. But I would say, don't label yourself as number 1, and don't tell people about being shy is number 2. The third one is to practice. And I always suggest starting small. Practice initiating conversations with strangers. That's the best way to start practicing. And what you can do is you can do it in situations that don't really matter a whole lot don't have a ton of consequences in your world. So for example, start a conversation with the checkout person at the grocery store, or with your barista, or when you're waiting in the line for the bus, or whatever it is. When you're in a situation with strangers, and you can start making small talk, and you can do that thing that a lot of us do when we don't know what else to say, is talk about the weather, right? It doesn't matter, but start small, and you be the one to initiate the conversation, and just practice. And if you do that for every single day for a week, then it's going to feel more comfortable, and it's going to feel less awkward, and you'll be able to do it more easily, and you'll be stretching that shyness muscle a little bit. So my first suggestion is to, in low cost situations, is to, and by low cost, I mean low cost to your social world and your workplace, etc., is to start small and start that conversation and just reward yourself when you do it. And you might even want to keep track of, how many people you talked to today and how many days in a row this week did you initiate a conversation with a stranger to stretch your capacity and to bridge that shyness gap a little bit. So practice and start small. The fourth thing is in your workplace, if you're in a meeting or you're in a group situation, is to speak up and speak up first in the meeting or the situation, or ask a question. And by first, I mean in the first few minutes, so that you don't sit there throughout the whole rest of the meeting worrying about what you're going to say or when you're going to say it or what you're going to ask. So just to test, this is an exercise, right? So to exercise and to try it out, be one of the first few people in the meeting or the group setting to ask a question or make a comment or say something, and then you can relax and you will have contributed at the beginning of the meeting or the conversation. And just try that. Unsuspecting people, remember, nobody's going to know that you're testing yourself or what you're doing, but you will know. And as you get more comfortable with doing it, it will become a whole lot easier. So in the first few minutes, 10, 15 minutes of a meeting or a gathering, you be one of the first voices to ask a question or to put forth a comment, or to ask for a clarification, whatever it may be, and just try that amongst your colleagues in a group setting in your workplace and see what happens. And the fifth thing is to make yourself a game plan. So write down a list of all the situations in which you feel shy and uncomfortable in the workplace. Write a whole list of them out, and then one by one you can address them and you can practice with them. So just like the practicing with strangers, and just like being first to speak up in a meeting, maybe there's a particular person that you've wanted to speak to in your workplace, but you've been too shy to do it. Well, maybe you can approach that person one week and make that less uncomfortable. But pick one thing from that list that you make, your game plan list, and work on that one thing. And then just check off the boxes and reward yourself and celebrate when you overcome that issue that you've been struggling with, that particular situation, because this is hard work. It's not going to instantly be fixed in one day. It's going to take time and effort and practice, but oh my goodness, it's worth it. It's worth feeling that confidence. The other thing you're doing when you overcome shyness is you take back your power. And by that, I mean that you are not just allowing other people to dictate what's going to happen. Your opinion and your voice is important and it matters. And it's really, really good for you to be able to add that to the mix, to the team, to the group, to your workplace setting, because you have interesting things to contribute. And when you're able to speak up with confidence and contribute and join in a conversation, then you're going to feel a whole lot better about yourself inside and feel more confident. Now, Gayatri, I want to thank you again for offering this topic. I hope that with your language practice that you are able to go and, even at a store or somewhere, just even say a few words in English to somebody to practice, and try doing that every day until it's more comfortable, until it's easier for you to approach somebody in that new language that you're trying to learn. Because, oh my goodness, English is it's a hard language to learn. So I commend you for working on it. And thank you again for writing to me and sending the suggestion. If you stick around and listen in the next coming weeks, I've got some great guests lined up for the Careers by Jen podcast. I'm doing a lot of interviews in the next while, so you'll be hearing me talking to other guests on the show. If you have any listener suggestions, please send them to me at careersbyjen.com, info@careersbyjen.com. Again, if you want to join in and help support the show, I would really appreciate that. It would really help a lot. careersbyjen.com/support. And any reviews on Apple Podcasts would be appreciated as well, to get the word out there and help other people come over to the show and maybe gain some insight or learn something new, or at least hopefully be a little bit entertained. So there you go. Thank you so much for listening. I very much appreciate you. Take good care. You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.